Hello. This week I want to make a start on the backlog of vehicles that I've got, because I have got some that go back quite a long way, and obviously, because I've been working through some of the buildings and I've been working through some of the armies, I've just let the vehicles build up. So this week what I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle these two Priest Kangaroos. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take all the parts out. I'm going to get them pre-washed and dry, and then what I'll do is I'll bring you back and we can start having a look at putting these together. So I'm looking at using these, probably unsurprisingly, for my Canadian army. So when it comes to the decorating, I will be, looking to identify it as Canadian as well. I've got several other vehicles. I do need some transport for my British as well. I think one of the things that I've got for them is the Bedford troop transport that I got quite some time ago. But anyway, we'll get to them over the coming weeks. But first of all, I'm going to get these ones done. So I'll get them washed and then I'll bring you back. Right, so as you can see, I've washed all of the parts, particularly the resin, because that's important. I don't want any residue that might affect paintwork later on. One other thing about these, because you've got some figures to put in this, I will have to paint their uniforms up separately. But what I will do, because obviously, when it's complete and I'm spraying this, you've got three moulded in soldiers, which obviously I can't remove, so they're going to initially have to be sprayed the same colour as these, as the outer thing, which is going to be green, but I can get around that anyway, because it won't be a million miles from their uniform colour. And then as regards these, obviously I shall, paint them up separately once we get cracking. But first of all, I want to work on getting the vehicle together. And I think there's not that many parts to it, so it's a relatively quick job. I've trimmed up some of this already, because it had got some mould fillings on there, but there are a few of the little bits that I do want to remove, before I put it together. There's a little bit there. The actual main body of it is pretty good, actually. It's not that bad. I think the bits that I've had to clean up the most have been the tracks, especially on the bottom here. I had to take the 3 lugs off, the moulded lugs on each one. Right, let's just have a look. do as well is I'm going to run one across it just to make sure that that's firmly gripped to its side as well. There we go. And that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry to one side, place the spares across there as well, and we'll do the same to the other one. Right, so I've gone back to the first one and the tracks seem to be sitting exactly how I wanted them, nice and straight. It's got rid of all the gaps. So let's start putting on the side panels now. Now this one, it's quite guided because you've got the flats that it sits into. Get a bit of it. And that's that on there, look. I mean, as kits go, I don't think they come a lot simpler than this one. But it's going to be a nice looking vehicle. I haven't had a chance to look at the card yet to see how many it can actually, you know, carry in the rule set. I'll have to have a look in a minute. That's that one on. Not whether I'm too close. I keep zipping out, I think, don't I? Is that better? Yeah, so that's the two plates in place now. Right. I think I'm going to put the two cleats on the front. Put the other one in. Right, so that's those in place. put these guns in place now. You see that? That's that first one. He's got his hand on the rifle. I think I'm going to try and put the glue onto the rifle this time. It might be easier getting it into this gap because I've got to get both hands connected. You see that? So his two hands were gripping the rifle, so that's like got them into place in both hand sockets. Nothing to fit to the driver, is it? Because he's facing into the wall anyway. So I think what I'll do is decide which head I'm going to have on which. I think the one outside, because the other full figure has got the plain helmet on, I think I'm going to put the other plain helmet on this one as well. I've clipped off and tidied up any little bits of extra metal that were in the way. Perfect. That's great. So that's that one done. So these are much of a muchness. I can put them. There's a little bit that wants trimming off on that. That's them in place. Right, around the back here we've got the towing hook. I'll stick that in while we're about it. That's that in place, look. Right. This one is holding a map, so we'll glue that in place as well. As I say, I will paint these up separately. There we go. That's him done. That's the ring in place. And the gun has got a little, I don't know whether you can see that, this bit where it sits on the inside of this rim. So you can glue it any way you like, really. But obviously I'm going to put mine about there. Right, so that's the gun in place. Now there's one more part, and that's this piece. Now, it's not hard to work out where it goes, but if you look at the expanded diagram, it's not shown. But if you look at this picture up here, look, you can see it's like the sill there that one of the men is leaning on to fire his gun, and you can just see those two mounting points. But as I say, it's not shown on the expanding diagram. Right, so we've got the two separate men built up, and then this is the Priest Kangaroo complete. As you can see, there's not a lot to it, but I like the look of it. I think it's a nice little vehicle to have. As I say, I'm going to make both up for my Canadian Army anyway. So what I'll do now is I'll set this to one side to just dry off, and I won't bother dragging you through there again. I'll build the other one up off camera. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. It looks nice. As I say, I meant to look at the card and just see if it, how many people it can carry. Oh, yeah, it can transport 11. So that's a good squad, isn't it? So, yeah. So I could have one of my squads in this and one in the other one. Ideal. Right. I'll get the other one built up and then I'll bring you back. Right, so that's the 2 priest kangaroos built up, and the 2 men in each are built up and ready to be painted. And what I'm going to have to do next is give them a primer, and I'm going to be using Army Painter, Army Green, and I shall spray all of these, including the separate men, in that. And then when it's dry, we can come back and we can have a look at some of the painting. In the meanwhile, I've got a little late entry here. I found somebody online that was selling a 3D printed Ram Kangaroo. All you got to do is stick the gun in place, which I've already done. And that's this. I think it's a pretty good print, actually. I had to do some cleaning up round the wheels where it's still got the struts and stuff in it. But all in all, I'd say it was a pretty good print. Obviously what I'm going to have to do for this one though, before we do the spraying, is, well, say have to, you don't have to, but possibly look to get some troops to put in that, or at least a couple of men, just to finish it off. But again, I'd add them separately like I do with these ones. But that's going to make a nice threesome for my Canadian army. So I'm pretty pleased with that. That covers all my transport needs. It could also tow the artillery. So yeah, it's a pretty good little collection. Right, I'll get these primed, and then when I come back we'll have a look at painting. What I will do, however, is with these separate men, I'm going to paint them up off camera, because you've seen me painting Canadian soldiers before, so you don't need to see that again. So I'll probably get them painted and then these primed, and when all of that's done, I'll bring you back and we'll carry on where we left off. So I've been painting up the figures from the kangaroos and getting them done first, as I said. And the other thing that I've done is I've got several other vehicles waiting, so I'm having quite a marathon session of painting figures at the moment for various vehicles that, you know, will come to eventually. But at the minute I'm just working on these Canadians. And obviously I've also painted the figures that are actually in there. I've not painted anything else yet. I'll do that on camera, but I just wanted to get the figures done because I knew they'd take the most time. I've done it on both of them. And then the other thing is, obviously, with this Ram Kangaroo, you know, that I got as a 3D printed model, I've affixed the gun, obviously, but other than that, that's all there was. Everything else was part of the mould. But what I do want to do, because it's going to look a little bit strange just like that, I'm going to build up a little figure montage to sit in it, you know, to make it look a bit more like these. I might make it so I can lift it out. So with that in mind, I got myself a spare sprue of the British Canadian Army, and I'm going to have a chop around with some of these, but I just want to think about it first and how I'm going to fit them in. Once I've done that and I've got them cut, I'll bring you back and then I'll show you what I'm going to do with them, and then again I'll paint them up off camera. Right, back in a minute. So at this point I took the opportunity to make a base to mount the 3 soldiers on, and while I was about it, I also added some of the stowage from my stowage collection and some bags from the sprues themselves. Once I'd got the base, you know, built up on both sides, so it'd sit on the recess. I could mount all the 3 soldiers back to back on the base, and that's going to allow me to drop it in and take it out when I don't want it in there. Well, I've finally painted all of the figures, as you can see, and the figures in the vehicles themselves. I've also gone through a load of my other vehicles that are waiting and pulled out the men from them and painted them up, because I don't want to spend time, you know, working on that when I'm doing the vehicle. But yeah, they've come out quite well, and I'm pleased with this, you know, the fact that I can lift it in and out of the Ram Kangaroo. Right, so now it's time to start painting up the details. So before I put the men in place, I want to allow myself full access to everywhere for painting. But what I'm going to start with is all the black on the wheels and the tracks themselves, and get them done first. And what I'm going to be using, as usual really, is the Necromancer cloak, which is a near black. I just prefer it to black itself. Black looks too stark. Right. Taking me time with this, but at the same time, you know, you've got to remember you're going to be adding washes and mud to this as well, so, you know, don't worry too much if you're a little bit inaccurate with this, because, like I say, the mud and all the washes are going to add to that effect anyway. And remember, this is what the tank moves on, so it's not going to be pristine. Alright, so that's what it's looking like. Obviously at the moment we're just putting the block colour on it, so... Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack on and get all the other tracks done on the vehicles, and then I'll bring you back when I turn to something else. What I might do while I've got the black out is pick up any obvious black areas that I've got to do, like the gun and the bits of track that are in these boxes on here. But I'll show it. I'll show you, you know, a little glimpse of some of it when I bring it back before we move on to the next thing. So I've finished all the tracks and the wheels, and I've also, as I said, done the bits of track on the front and the gun, and picked out any other little black bits while I was using it. And as I said, I've used the Necromancer cloak on these, but I will give them a brush with some metallic colour at the end. But at the minute I just want to get all the colours down. But I went through all 3 of them, including my Ram Kangaroo. Again, done all the black areas, picked out some of the tools, parts that were black, and the little machine gun on the front. So what I'm going to be doing now is picking out the individual bits of luggage that's moulded on and the ones that I've added on. But before I get to them, I'm going to be painting these logs on the side. Well, just get the base colour down of some I'm going to use werewolf fur, I think, on these, but then I shall add washes and things to grey it up a bit as well. So basically I decided to do the bags and the sheets, not in the Canadian uniform but in the khaki, because that's what I use on the troops. But having said that, I'm now picking out a few items with the Canadian green. And the next thing I'm going to do on these is I'm going to pick out some of these smaller blanket rolls, and I'm going to use Crypt Wraith by Army Painter. I did pick out some of the blankets on the backpacks for the Canadians in this colour as well, because it's a bit of a, looks a bit military colour really for the blanket. So I'm going to pick a few rolls out and do the same ones on each one, obviously. So I've picked out some of the individual colours on it now, of the different blankets, rolls and boxes. So they've all got their base colours on now, and what I'm going to be doing, I've done the same on these ones, look. Just picking out some of the bags and the stowage. I've gone for the Russian uniform in the end for that. I thought it looked better. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give them a 50-50 mix of strong tone wash with its quick shade wash mixing medium, just to tone it down a little bit. And I'm going to give the entire tank, you know, all the vehicles, keep calling them tanks, give them all a thorough coat except for the figures. And then when that's done, I need to let it dry for quite some time. Once it's dried, I can then return and reintroduce a little bit of the olive drab to, you know, to bring the colour back, but to leave the wash in place. So I'll show you what I mean when I get to it. But first of all, I'm just going to brush it on quite liberally, but I don't want to leave it to pool, you know, in big splodges, you know, so spread it out quite well, but let it get in with all the detail, so it sits in the detail. Again, I'm going to do the stowage as well. No need to bother with the tracks, because we're going to be doing more to them in a bit. Just don't want any big pulls on it, that's all. You can drag it down off the side. Don't forget the front. As you can see, I'm not doing anything special, I'm just slapping it on really. There goes the doorbell again. Right, I'm also going to just paint the base as well with a wash. And you can do these as well, you know, the suspension units, but just leave the tracks. that's it really. Then I'm just going to leave that, and I'll get the other two done off camera. Now that the wash has dried, I'm just going to basically reintroduce some of that army colour, and I'm just going to do it in sweeping motions. With a dry brush. Don't want to see where I've been, I just want it to have that hue. You know, like a little bit of a light area. Whether it's picking this up on the camera, but it does make a difference. This is just to really kind of stop it from looking pristine. The real weathering comes later, but we'll be adding the transfers before then. Right, I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to do that to the other two now, and then I'll bring you back. So it's time to start sticking on a few of the decals now before we do any weathering. And I'm just going to start with the Allied stars on these. That's that one. And now that's given me the position, so I know where to put the next one as well. There we go. I'm not going to put, you know, too many on it really, because I don't want anything to get in the way of its adaptability. But I'll start with these. Right, so I've been taking a look on the internet to get an idea for what decals might fit on these vehicles and where they'd be, and I've found some historical photos, and what I've used is a combination of them. Some of the numbers are not exact, but they're the same sequence, so they're perfectly adequate. So let's put one of the numbers on the rear of the chassis, very much like, you know, the actual Sherman tank really. The number's always in white and it's towards the back on the side. So that's that one. So that's going to be it for the Ram Kangaroo. I think I've put on as many as I want to put on it. So I've soaked some decals now for the Priest, and I'm putting on some of the decals I've seen examples of, and that's basically it for this one. So what I'm going to do now is I've got some others here for the other priest. I'll get those on off camera because you've seen me do it now, and when they're dry we'll come back and then we can start the weathering process. Another quick touch that I'm going to do before I totally leave these to dry is I'm just dry brushing some gunmetal onto the edges of the tracks. There you go, look. And I'm also going to do it on the gun as well. Right, so now that they're all painted up, I can start the weathering process. And the first thing that I'm going to do is just do some light chipping here and there on it. And I tend to use my Necromancer cloak by Army Painter for this. And basically I tear off a tiny piece of sponge and dip it into a little bit of the paint, but then try and get as much of that off onto a paper towel. Just dab it off. Right, let's take this one first. So then basically where I think I want some chipping, I'll just tap it on the edges, or that's very fine. I don't know whether you'll see that bit. I'll do a little bit more. I tend to do it on the front edges, you know, where it's caught something. And this is why I wanted to get the transfers in place first, because it's always good if you can include them in the chipping effect. It just adds to the realism. Right, so I've finished off all the chippings on each of the vehicles, just in the places that are going to see the most action really, and particularly on the front here where it's pushed by something. And I've done that to all three of them now. I've not overdone it, I've kept it, you know, fairly tame. You can just see it here, look. But mainly in any clambering points or moving parts. Right, so the next thing that I want to do to it is I'm going to use some of this Vallejo splash mud, but I'm not going to just use it neat like I normally do. I've watered it down until there's, you know, it's going to be more of a stain than a real splash. So I'm going to just try some of that on it, and what I'll do is I'll try it on the bottom first, because then if I don't like it, or it's too thick, or I can change it. I'd sooner build this up slowly, and you know, if I'm not satisfied with this when it dries, I can always add a little bit more, but one thing you can't do is start taking it back off. So I'm going to start with this, and then if I want to add more, I will do. Right, so that's enough for that one. Right, I'm going to do the same to the other two. I'll let them dry and then I'll bring you back and we'll have a look at what else we can do. Right, so that washed mud isn't quite dry yet, so I'm handling it with a bit of care. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to add some little bits of the Vallejo thick mud inside the tracks, especially at the back of the wheels. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want, don't want it to look like he's been driving through a bog, but I do want it to have gone through some mud. And then you can put a bit on the track as well. Splash it up underneath that as well. And you can see that side that I've done already. Right, using the splash mud, watered down but not as much as before, I like to do this and flick it off with the brush. It's the best way of getting a natural, like splash of mud as it would flick up. Again, you don't want to overdo it, but at the same time, if I bring that up, you can see it where it's done it. Just spots here and there. Right, this final stage, I'm just using some of my grime flurry wash to put like water streaks and rain streaks, where it's caught the muck and then ran down off the side. Nothing too dramatic, just keep it fine. And just focus on the places where you're likely to get that kind of run off the top of the tank. I don't know whether you can see this, it's so, fairly fine lines. Let's do some on the others. The idea is basically so they don't look pristine, just painted straight out of the box. They've seen some action. A few from the rivets as well. I don't know whether you can see these, or if I put one just here, look. It probably don't pick up that well on the camera, but that's enough for that one. Right, so in a last minute change, so I'd got a sequenced number section on these to time with all my other Canadian vehicles. I've renumbered the decals on this to represent the Canadian 27th Armoured Regiment. So they're all part of that now. And any future vehicles I do for Canada will all be the same. They've been varnished. They've had a second coat now. So basically, that's it. They're finished. So what I think I'll do is I'll take a few close-up pictures and we'll wrap this video up with them. So that's 3 of my backlog vehicles completed. I'm quite happy with this collection. They're a lovely set of vehicles. Bit different from all the others that I've got. Anyway, I hope you've found it useful. I hope it's perhaps gave you some ideas what to do with yours if you're building any of them. If you have liked it, as always, please consider giving it a thumbs up or even subscribing for when the next video drops. And I'll see you again soon. Bye.